Shabbat Shalom. This week's Torah portion, Shoftim, which means judges, and begins in Deuteronomy 16, verse 18. Judges and bailiffs shall you make thee in all your gates, which the Eternal your God has given you, throughout your tribes, and they should judge the people with just judgment. You shall not wrest judgment. You shall not respect persons, neither take bribery, for bribery does blind the eyes of the wise and pervert the right words of the righteous. Justice shall you pursue, that you may live and inherit the land which the Eternal your God gives to you. This is a wonderful way to start a portion. Of course, it is actually right in the middle of one of Moses' last speeches to the people before he dies. And it's a speech that includes many commandments, commandments that apply both to the nation's religious life and to the nation's civil life. Choosing to begin the Torah portion this week with this statement that you should appoint judges and constables, or judges and policemen. They should be throughout. They should be in every single tribe. Makes a very important statement. The importance of law, the importance of the rule of law, the importance of judges. And also the importance of justice. Throughout these verses that I have read, there is a constant refrain, the importance that these judges should judge the people with justice, that they should not take bribes, that they should not dispense justice in an unfair way, but rather that they should chase after and try to seek justice at every time. Now, these few verses are really right in the middle of verses that are actually pertaining to what we would call religious laws. The verses just before the end of last week's portion talks about the holidays. The following verses talks about the evils of pagan worship. But right after the verses that talk about the evils of pagan worship, we go back to issues having to do with law, with justice, and with judgments. And that is in chapter 17. We have verse 6 that talks about the need for 2 or 3 witnesses. In verse 8, talking about the needs to go to a Supreme Court. If there are judges who are not able to judge a particular issue, are not able to reach a resolution, they go to a higher court, which is in near the temple in Jerusalem. The same words that are used here, go to the place that God has chosen, which we know, of course, will be Jerusalem. I think there's a very important comment here, though, in starting this Torah portion with the issue of justice and interspersing it with so-called religious laws. And I think if you notice throughout this section of Deuteronomy, Moses is giving many commandments. And they are interspersed, the religious laws and the civilian laws. The laws that apply to any civilization, regardless of what their religious beliefs are. And at the same time, within and inevitably attached to them are these commandments, are these issues that deal with the proper way to worship God. And I think the message here on the very first instance is very clear, that for God, God's law encompasses everything. Unlike so many religions, where the religious laws focus exclusively on issues of worship, issues of ceremony, issues of how, what beliefs are all about and how God is to be worshipped. In the case of the Torah, God has interspersed those kinds of issues, which are definitely important, with issues of how man builds a just and moral society, how man lives with his fellow man, and how justice is achieved. I also would like to point out, in chapter 17, when we move back again to the issues of justice, there is a very important issue here that has actually become fundamental to the understanding of Jewish law throughout the ages. As I mentioned, we're talking about going to a Supreme Court. And then in verse 10 and 11, we have the following. And you shall do according to the word which they of that place which the Eternal shall choose shall tell you. In other words, the Supreme Court. And you shall observe to do according to all that they teach you. according to the word of the law, which they shall teach you, and according to the judgment which they shall tell you, you shall do. You shall not depart from the word which they shall tell you to the right nor to the left. Now, these two verses form the basis for what we in Judaism call the oral law. God gave us this Torah, this Bible. Moses recapped many of the laws that had been previously discussed and added many, many more for the first time in the book of Deuteronomy, giving the nation of Israel a set of laws by which to live. But it's clear that as much as you can write and read a book of laws, it will never totally fit and apply to every single situation. It has to be adapted, it has to be understood, and there needs to be some kind of an authority who can explain the details as they apply to a given situation or to a given time. And in these verses, God has handed over that authority to the priests, to the judges that will be in that time. A system of law is already set up where God says himself, and look at verse 11, according to the word of the law, which they shall teach you. God himself hands his authority over to these men who will be inheritors of Moses, who will study from Moses, Joshua, the elders of that time, who will then pass down the word of law, the explanations, who will study the law and understand God's intentions throughout the centuries, and will enable us to have a better understanding of what it is we are supposed to do. And God says specifically, you are not to depart from the word which they shall tell you to the right nor to the left. The authority of these judges, who then become rabbis, is paramount. For God has set up a system not only requiring us to stick to the commandments that he has given us, but given us a system which he has invested with divine authority in order to enable us to practice those commandments in every single situation and in every single time. Shabbat Shalom from Samaria.